Today we're going to talk about how to create your own case essential steps and automation path inside of Firm Overwatch. We're here today with McTier, a power user of Firm Overwatch and one of the founding members, and the reason that this technology even exists. He wanted to do some things in existing legal software that was not available at the time, so he called me and we made it. So here you go, McTier, you've got the floor. First, talk to us about really how you implement these automations. How does it help you out in the practice of your law?
Yeah, first I'll talk about the difference from what's out there, because there's frankly nothing out there like it, because Firm Overwatch allows your team to be able to not just work together, but also know where everybody is at all times. And the automatic tasking is the main feature, at least for me in my practice, where when you're on a team, I run in teams of 3 for a while. I ran in teams of 2. And that's another thing that I loved about Firm Overwatch, is that even when it was just me and a paralegal, I could go in, edit the steps to where she would do something like she would get a summons ready for the complaint and format the complaint that I already drafted. Once she did that, clicks next step, it automatically would go to me and it would show up on my dashboard, and it would also follow the days that I wanted this particular task done. So that way we could do it a lot faster and be able to file cases quicker and then get things moving. Throughout, I believe when we just started, it was the litigation, because that's where 85 to 90% of the work is done, or where the proverbial sausage is made. And it was extremely helpful, but through practice, I realized, well, there's a few more things to it than just after a complaint is filed, or even after a litigation fee agreement is drafted. A lot of times it makes sense to send out a demand letter. And I realized that was one thing that not only have I, missed before on following up with demand letters, but I think it's probably the most common thing that litigators will face, because we got trials coming up and it's hard to keep up with everything. We'll have 5 or 6 new clients come in, we'll send out demand letters, and we'll follow up on 5 of them, and one of them we wouldn't be able to follow up immediately. So that's when we came in and put the pre-litigation path down, to where it keeps you accountable and shows you, once that demand letter goes out, there's a follow-up procedure that's automatic. So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
talk to this just 1 second about how did you do this before Firm Overwatch? Because you've been practicing law for a long time and you did not have these systems in place. So what did it look like before you got Firm Overwatch?
Sheer anxiety, and spending the majority of my morning going through my cases and going in manually typing out tasks in various firm softwares, and walking into people's offices saying, hey, did you get this? Where are we on this task? And it was insanely time consuming, and not just that, but anxiety inducing, because you have so many cases and matters, and they don't always come in a uniform way when you're running a business. Sometimes you'll get, like I said before, 5 or 6 cases will come in 1 week, or even more. And when that would happen before, I would spend the majority of my time trying to figure out where these cases were. The associates that are working for me, were doing the work, but I was having to go and make sure that everybody was on what they need to be doing. And that takes a lot of time. And also there's always a risk that you miss something when you do it that way, or at least you lose time. That's something that in this job, clients definitely don't want, because some clients you never even have to have any software for. They'll email you every day. They'll ask you for an update. No matter how many updates you give them, they're constantly over you. Some of them, they'll give you the case and they won't check back in for a month or 2 months. And if you don't have a procedure and now technology to automatically keep things moving, then the chances of you losing some time, at least on that, is extremely high, which was why we wanted the civil litigation path in the first place. But the beginning and the end of a case also needed its own paths to be able to run the case efficiently. And the one that made the the biggest difference adding it this year, or actually there's two of them. If you can see on my screen, I put in a pre-litigation path, which is, you engage the client.
Go ahead and toward the bottom there, select it in the yellow box there so you can see one of your paths. There you go.
Now you can see, always you got to engage the client. So draft the fee agreement, email the fee agreement to the client. And once we have that back, it automatically goes over to the next person, which here I've got the associate doing it, and Firm Overwatch is the junior drafting the demand letter. So they'll hit that task, and they're given 5 days to do that. Once it's drafted and they click complete, it automatically goes to the senior attorney on the case, which would be me and my firm. And I've got 2 days to look at it, approve it, and then when I click next, it automatically goes to paralegal, and they'll serve it. Now, here's the really cool function about it. After it's served, then there's follow up and compliance, right? Because we'll give them a deadline to respond to the demand letter, either respond or pay money. And if they miss that compliance date, it updates us, and we simply click, in this case, the paralegal will click next step once the compliance date is over, and it notifies the associate on the matter that, okay, I've got to update the client on the next steps. And not only is it helpful to the client, but it also speeds up the business, because if they're not going to respond to a demand letter, then the next step is to file a lawsuit. And if you can bridge that gap and get the timeline down, you can immediately go into drafting a fee agreement for full-on litigation in court, get that engagement letter back, and then you're on the litigation pathway, which was originally the only pathway that was created. And then over time, more pathways were created. This has been extremely helpful. Let me show you one more.
Well, what I've seen, and I know a little bit about your practice, is that before, when you were onboarding a client, you had to check on it. Like you said, you had to make sure that everything was done. And if your staff was really working hard on other things, this just got pushed to the back. Like you would go several days, then you'd have to go check on it because you were holding that information in your database in your head, but there's only so much bandwidth. So you would hit a point to where you were having to constantly cycle through, I've got to check on this, I've got to check on this. Even though your team was working really hard, it would get lost in the shuffle. This way, it never gets lost in the shuffle. It's there. They know exactly what's expected of them. They know how many days they have to handle this task. And if they don't do it in that amount of time, like it shows up red and, you can see and they can see. So it's a great way to just understand where your firm is in all the processes. It does it automatically. Like you said, one button click and it's there, boom. So,
yeah. And it also reminds me of a story. I was meeting with an attorney about before we created the steps for the default judgment procedure. And I was telling him about Firm Overwatch and what we're about to do. This is before you could go in and actually do it yourself as a user. You had to do it before, but now you can actually go in and create your own paths as a user. But I was talking about the default judgment procedure in North Carolina, and he goes, why would you even need it for that? It's just 2 steps. I'm like, well, 2 big overarching steps, but how do you get there? And I forced them to tell me each step of how you go about getting a default when you have a case team together. And about 10 steps later, he goes, oh, I see now. I'm like, yeah, because it is a somewhat simple procedure, but there's a lot of moving parts to it. And when you're working on a team, the most important thing is that each person knows not only what they need to do,
how they need to
do it, but when they need to do it. So this fills all 3,
Yeah. And before, you were the one having to channel that and make sure that was happening. And that's like, the lawyer you were talking about is like, there's only 2 steps in it. Well, there's only 2 steps because he's so involved in that process, right? So he's got to make sure that all these things happen and all these things happen at the right time. And that's, again, if you just had 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 10, 15 cases, you wouldn't need this type of thing because you can handle that in your brain if that's how you wanted to live. But when you're handling, above 15 cases, and that's most people are like, and most, that's
well, you
just
can't survive.
Right.
With a firm, 15 cases.
I mean, that's
you
just
go out of business.
Low
case don't pay their bills, and you're done. You're toast.
Right.
It's just not the nature of the law practice. I mean, you've got cases, and you have to have cases coming in, and you got to be willing to expand when when the needs, demand it. And this has helped me to do that. I mean, I'm not even a full year in the practice yet, and I've already grown tremendously in large part due to Firm Overwatch, and it's just been an amazing product, and it's still advancing, and also now that you can go in and create your own paths, it helps out tremendously. And that's one thing that we're going to walk through in a little bit, creating your own path, specifically for appeal, because right now I've got the pre-litigation, I've got trial, mediation, summary judgment, and default judgment. I'll mention default judgment real quick since I have it pulled up, but it is 2 steps. But when you have a case team, I'm going to slowly scroll through it. There's a lot to do. And there's also, you got to check with the court, because a lot of times you'll file the motion, you'll submit the order, and the court won't do anything. They're overloaded. They need some version of this. And you got to follow up with them. So, hey, where's this order? We need you to please rule on this order and get it back. And once you get it back, you can't just say, oh, let's go to the next step. For example, once you filed the motion and order for the entry of default, you got to get the order, draft a certificate of service of the order for default, and then you got to serve it, and then you got to file it, and then you can move on to the actual motion for judgment for default. And 98% of the time, with bigger civil cases, you're going to need, if the complaint's not verified, you're going to need your client to come in and sign an affidavit. And that takes time too. And it also takes coordination with the client. So not only do you have to hold the court accountable and to get them to do what they need to do, but you also have to coordinate with your client. And it does 2 things. 1, it keeps them updated, and 2, it helps the client assist you in the case. And throughout the procedure, it'll give the client notice, hey, this is the next step. We're going to need your involvement in this step. And those messages, if you want to, in your program, automatically go out with the client, so that way they're not asking you what's going on in the case. They know. So you're kind of flipping it on its head, especially with the clients that I was talking about earlier that are heavily involved in their case. If you can be that way towards them, then it's going to cut down on your email traffic dramatically. And it's
Right.
also happy, because ultimately they just want to know what's going on in their case.
We want our users to get as close to inbox zero with admin or notification type emails as possible. We want you to use your email as, we have to have communications with other people. That's fine. But internally, we want this all to be built as much as possible in Firm Overwatch, because it keeps it organized. I mean, you know what organizing an inbox is. It takes a lot of time and aggravation. I sat down with all mine yesterday just to clear it out for the new year. It took me 20 minutes, and that's not something that I want our users to ever have to do inside of their running of the cases, And there's also something here. I don't know if you're using this yet. We went live with this. We have a family law group that handles a significant amount of cases, and they work on various different case stages at one time. So they wanted an ability to add regular tasks to each case stage. So once a task is completed, you can actually add regular tasks to it, and you can automate that. So you only do it one time. So it's not like you have to send an email or you have to remember to do this. The whole, I got to remember to do this thing, is no longer viable if you have Firm Overwatch. Like, once you set it up, it can be done. So you would just click on, in your area right there, you'd click on the linked task automation. Have you seen that? Have you noticed that's different there?
Yeah.
On these?
Let's walk through that. So
Yeah.
Task automation.
Yeah. You don't have to add one, but click it and just see what you do, and then you could add a task, a link task. All right. So now you don't have to set it up, but now you can type out what that task can be. In the describe task details, you can tag your associate, yourself, or your paralegal, and you could, however many days, the same deal. And every time you finish the task that this is on, it will automatically add a regular task to do something else in relation to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I don't really need to use that much,
Right.
but I can definitely see in family law how that would be
100%.
really important, because in family law, it's not as rigid, or at least according to family law attorneys I've talked to, and you got to be flexible.
Yes, 100%.
I can see that.
They need to do multiple case stage tasks at one time. So that's how they're using that. But again, that's feedback from our users that we're integrating. If you guys that are thinking about Firm Overwatch, if you have something that would actually change my life, get with us, give it to us, and there's a good chance we can build it out. There's not been anything that our users have said we needed that we have not been able to build for you so far, and that's something that is unique to Firm Overwatch right now. You're not just implementing a system right now, you're able to help build that system. So we're really excited about that. And hopefully we can keep that as we grow, but that's how we're operating currently. Go ahead and build something out like you were talking about, your new case.
All right. So I'm actually doing this for the first time. So let's see how user-friendly it is. Add new firm practice area. So what I want to add is appeal. But I'm in 2 states, North Carolina, South Carolina. They have very different procedures. So I'm going to do North Carolina appeal.
All right. Now go down and select it in the yellow box. You should see it. There you go. Now here's an important understanding of how this component works. So your first case stage is just called initial right there. So you could add whatever you'd like to your first step. And then you could add a case stage at the top if you want to design that tab a little more. You can actually build it all on the same initial tab. So that really doesn't matter. Those case stages, add a case stage, that's there for you to help organize it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you're, whatever your initial deal is, or you could add a case stage after you put a task in that and then hit save.
Okay. And once it's created.
Yeah, you would click on that tab to add the task into that. So first I'll start on the initial tab there and add your initial task. That's how I would add task. There you go. Tell me about your thought process as you're adding this task.
Well, I'm creating it from scratch here, but usually with appeal, you need to, first step is a notice of appeal, but it got me thinking, well, actually, no, it's the first step is to make sure you know the deadline for appeal. So you need to input the deadline to appeal. It's a pretty important task, the malpractice type tasks. So it's going to be the lead on the case. And you need to do that within 1 day. So as soon as you know that the judgment has either gone against your client or I do this a lot. I hop in after a case has gone sideways. I've done a lot of appeals. Actually, the majority of my appeals have been for someone else that doesn't do appellate work, that they've come to me and said, hey, we got a bad ruling. We need you to appeal it. So once you're notified of the either the bad ruling or someone else's bad ruling, I like to say, look, get it done in 1 day, to put it on the calendar and put a hard deadline on there. So we'll save that. Oh, I just noticed it cleared up everything at the top. That's awesome. So as soon as you input the first task, it automatically gets everything squared away. All right. So next task is going to be draft the notice of appeal. I'm going to put the junior on that. So 3 days to complete that. And here, once you can shoot your own videos, upload them to YouTube, and then put them on here. You don't have to use our training. I mean, our training's built in, but if you have ways that you want to train your firm, you can create your own videos and then put the link in there. So that way you can always be there training your employees when you're not there. If you're trying a case or getting ready for a hearing, or, doing anything other than training, it can all be in there.
Yeah, and you don't even have to use YouTube if you didn't want to. You could actually just record it on your cell phone as you're going for a walk one day, and then upload it to your OneDrive or wherever your case things are kept. Your case files are kept, and then just create a folder called training and upload everything there, and then you could link it to that. If you didn't want to take the extra step of going to YouTube, you can actually just create the video file locally and save it locally, and then put it there. You could actually link it to whatever. That's something that can be used in a lot of different ways. But like you're talking about, we're building that training. So that first step that you just created, if you hire somebody new, then they're not going to know how you want that step done, right? They're going to either do it their own way, or they're not going to know how, and they're going to have to ask you. This prevents anybody from having to ask you. So you've got training built into it. If you create that step and then record a video, or just, you could even, if we have a checklist function. If you just wanted a SOP, just a standard operating procedure, you could type your own checklist there that was a dummy sheet for whoever's sitting there. And there's a good chance that if you do hire somebody new and they are there and that training's built in, that they can use it the first couple of times until they understand how to do it. It's not like you have to do it every time, but it's there for you if you need it. Firm Overwatch creates systems that are there for you all the time and there for you if you need it. So
yeah, by the way, doing this for the first time, this is very user friendly. Good work on that. So I've already created the first 4 steps of this, and it's really only one step, right? File a notice of appeal. But to do that, we need to know the deadline. You need to have the initial draft. The ultimate responsible attorney needs to look at the draft. We need to give it to the paralegal to file and serve, and the paralegal needs to file and serve it. So those 4 tasks I built while you were talking. The next thing you need to do in North Carolina is you've got to make arrangements for a transcript. So once the appeal is served, transcribe. And down here with the checklist, this is kind of 2 tasks in one, because you got to order it from the court and get a transcriptionist contacted. So order transcript from court, contact transcriptionist.
yeah, we worked hard on that component you're using because this is the brains from Overwatch. This is our automation paths. This is what sets it apart from all the other legal software and how it's implemented too. Even if the big guys decided they were going to build this tomorrow, how we implement it is very incredibly user friendly, easy, and is something that we've taken great pains and pride to do so that it can be easily understood, easily implemented, easily changed at any point. Again, you can find as you're doing this, and once you start implementing this new path, that if things are getting bottlenecked on a certain step a lot, allow the user to do that through the flagging of a case. If you see that that step is flagged a lot, then you know that you need to create some training, or you need to do a little better in making your team understand what you expect from them there.
Let's do the extra tasks here. So after the transcript has been reviewed and you have a contract, you need to, paralegal's job is to file and serve.
And when they're done with that, they don't have to send you an email. They just click a button, it's done, and you know that it's been done, and whatever's next happens automatically. That's the beauty of our system, is that one button click when it's done. I know you guys do this, but what we ask our users to do is to use a 2-monitor setup and to put Firm Overwatch on one side and whatever you currently work in on the other. And once you complete that task, once you handle that upload or you file that motion, whatever it is, once it's done, then you just click that you've done that task in Firm Overwatch. One button click, and then it automatically tags whoever's next to do whatever's next.
And whatever's next here is the transcriptionist then has 60 days to prepare the transcript and get it back. So this is something you have to monitor, because again, this is something you have to stay on top of people, because if they get out close to that 60-day period and you're not tracking it, then your appeal could ultimately get dismissed. So this is something that's out of your hands as far as preparation. This is a separate company that's preparing the transcript. They've got to get that delivered in 60 days. If not, you can make a motion to extend that. And if you're not on top of that, you could be in trouble. All right. So it's a pretty important deadline. I'm going to put a case leader on that one. So as soon as we go from it being filed, days to complete, I put 35 in here, because if we don't have it in 35 days, we need to start having email traffic to the transcriptionist. Where are you? Do you need more time? Because that will allow us to stay way ahead.
Right. And again,
the great thing about this, let me say this real quick.
Go ahead.
That you can create your own deadlines in this way in advance of the ones that can kill you. And by having automatic tasking to the next person on the team, you can knock these out a lot faster. By going through this the quickest way, you're able to actually get your appeal heard as quickly as possible.
I've said this several times, but I can't understate how important this is to give you back that mental bandwidth that you are going to have to either set a reminder for yourself inside of something else, put it on your calendar to do whatever, however you would have done it before, or just have to remember that it does it automatically. You don't have to, each time you do this if you practice law for the next 20, 30 years, how much of your life is spent calendaring things? How much of your life is spent sending those emails? A, that's billable time that can be recouped and actually make you guys some money. But B, that's quality of lifetime. And we haven't really pushed that a lot, but our users are telling us so much about the quality of life they're getting back because of the offloading of the things that they would normally have to remember or just constantly do. with Firm Overwatch, we want to take all the aggravation we can. What you guys do is incredible anyway, and it's incredibly aggravating on most things. So we want to take that out of the admin or the things that you will have to do constantly as you practice law for the rest of your career that we can. Like you basically have your own personal assistant for not just for you, but for everybody on your team, keeping them locked in and understanding where they're going at all times. And it's something you can check on too if however much oversight you want to have. We give that to you.
All right, so now we're all the way down to serving the proposed record on appeal. And although there's only a few deadlines here, in order to meet those deadlines, you can see all these tasks had to happen before that. And you can also see there's different people on the team. Now, if you only have a paralegal, you don't have an associate, then you would simply, all the tasks that have a junior on there, you would just, have the senior and paralegal to do. And also with the draft, you can simplify it a little bit. If you don't have an associate, you could just simply have, draft notice of appeal, right? Because since you're the final person looking at it, you don't need the second task of review and edit the notice of appeal. You can eliminate tasks where you don't need them.
And you can, even if you're a single user, Firm Overwatch really shines in a team aspect, but if you are a single user of this, you can still set it up as if you had a team because you're planning on growing one, and it will automatically task you, as a senior. Even if you put, this is the paralegal's job, and one day I want to have a paralegal, or say you have a paralegal and you want to have the associate do something, but you don't have that associate yet, but you hope to, in, a couple months, hire one, you can set it as the associate's job inside of your automations, and it will look, if there's no associate there, it'll automatically tag the case. You can future proof it if you wanted to. What we've tried to do in the making of Firm Overwatch is allow you to build the firm that you want, not just the firm that you currently have. So you can set up these automations, these trainings, and then you should be able to scale much more quickly. It takes a lot of the pain out of the scaling when you have the training already built in. It takes a little bit of initial work, but Firm Overwatch on some paths come with the training built in, and we'll work constantly towards expanding that as well. So initially, when you first started building this path, you said, okay, this is basically 2 steps.
Yeah,
right?
It's this part is essentially 3 steps. File the notice of appeal, you get the transcriptionist ready, and then you get the proposed record on appeal ready. And with those 3 steps, I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13 steps.
Right. And this is effectively training for your group too. So you don't have to remember where your process should kick in. You don't have to see where anything is so that you can, again, hold that mental bandwidth together. This is like training as well for your group. So
yeah, and I have not viewed it as that, but I spent a lot of the early years as an associate trying to figure out what the next step is. And, that was a lot of time that I couldn't bill for clients. I'm just spinning my wheels trying to figure out what the next step is so that I can start the clock again. And with this, the clock started. They
immediately
know that as soon as I put the deadline to appeal and mark complete, the associate has 3 days to draft the notice of appeal. And once that's done, I've got 1 day to review the notice of appeal. And once I give it to the paralegal, she's got 1 day to file it. This is on a typical appeal, and you're way, way out ahead of the deadlines. If you end up getting hired and you've got to file a notice of appeal that day because you weren't on the case before, obviously you can just jump straight to that task and knock it out, and then you're back on track. So sometimes you have to make a game time decision on where you want to start. And that's another beautiful thing about it. For example, I just hopped into an appeal. Client wanted me to do it. I did not have this case at the trial level, and she decided she wanted me to do it the very last day of the deadline. So obviously I didn't even input the deadline to the appeal because I already knew it. I didn't have an associate draft notice of appeal. I drafted it and gave it to Anna to file, and we were able to do that on day 1. So with that case, I would start on the 5th step here, make arrangement for a court reporter to transcribe.
Right. And to do that real quick, you would just click add case, type in your case name, the information you need, and then click edit case essential step. And then once you selected this automation path, it would show you those steps. And then you click whichever start proceedings you want to. So it's very simple to do that.
Let's say, a client's not happy with their current counsel and they hire you in the middle of an appeal, and you figure out, okay, they've got a court transcriptionist. We would just start here. We would start reviewing what they have and make sure whether or not they've filed that notice of transcript contract within 14 days of the notice of appeal. And then we'll just start monitoring the 60-day period for the transcript to be delivered. And the great thing about that, well, there's a lot of great things, but what I really like is, let's say we get a transcript back in 10 days, right? We get it back, and because it's on my task, I know, all right, we've got the transcript back. I'm not waiting the 60-day period. I'm just marking next step. And then the associate, the junior, is going to start drafting the proposed record on appeal.
It immediately kicks to them, right?
Yep. That's a very in-depth process. It takes a lot of time. You have to get everything in the right order. You have to follow the appellate rules and put the record where it needs to be. That task is perfect for an associate because it's very rule-based. The rules lay out exactly what needs to be in there, what doesn't need to be in there, and they can get moving on that. And, they'll have 15 days to do that. And then, I would have 5 days to review and edit the proposed record on appeal, get it to the paralegal, serve the proposed record on appeal. And then at that point, we're waiting on opposing counsel. Now we're off to the biggest task, drafting the appellate brief. 30-day deadline, but I give the associate 15 days to do it. So that way I've got 15 days to review.
You hit that green button too, just so it saves it every time, but I'm obsessive compulsive about things. We're super saving it now.
There you go. I hit it twice.
Yeah, you're good. And you could be as detailed in these creation of the automation steps as you want to. Like, you can really get granular with it, or you can just hit the high spots. It depends on how you want to run your firm and how you want your team to be tasked and understand what their daily just work should look like. So in Firm Overwatch, when you sign in, you go straight to your Overwatch page, and it gives you your top 3 case essential tasks by deadline. So you can either focus on that. In theory, if you're on top of all those deadlines, you could just basically stay on that Overwatch page and click through as you worked, and then those deadlines will come up. But you can view them all, when you click on the case task in Firm Overwatch, and it pulls up your automated case task. Now, the automated case tasks are different than just standard. Everybody does standard tasking in some way or another. I mean, we do it as well, but I think the way we've implemented it, it makes a lot more sense to the actual practicing attorney. It's not just something somebody else has built before. So that's under your task and events tab. The automation will be under your case task tab.
All right. The last task, serve the reply brief. And then you wait on the Court of Appeals to determine whether or not you're going to have oral argument or not.
There you go. Now hit that green button for me one more time. And now that this is built, you never have to do it again. When you have a case that's in this automation path, there you go. You basically preset all those to-do emails for the rest of your life. You did it one time right here. You can do it a lot quicker when somebody's not talking in your ear when you're on a podcast too.
Sure.
And we can help. If you don't have your systems built out, we can help with that too. Obviously, you are the source of truth, but we have built out paths for our users. In building your first path, if you've never used automation before in anything, you actually will learn how you add things. All right, so you're going to add all right, so you're setting the case team here. So you're adding a new case. Did you set yourself on the case team?
Yes.
You don't have to do that since you're the case leader. Just a heads up. Yep, saved you a click.
Oh, there it is. North Carolina Appeal.
There. All right. Now, pretend like we're starting in the middle of it. Do you see that button there? Right there? Yep.
Right.
Up top. Add exam. So if you're in the middle of it, click that just real quick so people can see it. All right. See it says case stage there? There you go. There's the case stage. So if you're starting in the middle of it, you click whichever point you want to start, and you hit it from there, and the automations take over from there. Make sense?
Yep. So I guess I'll just pretend the case I was just talking about, where we are, let's just start there. We'll be on step 6, and then it automatically starts from there.
Yep, 100%. And you don't have to just for
put the case details in here.
Talk a little bit about the factual premise. You wanted, this is probably not relevant in your current automation path, but you wanted that in there. So
yeah, for the appellate side, especially if we just got this case, the associate doesn't know much about it. And here you can type in what the case is about. right? And that will help the associate start to do research. 5 or 6 steps ahead. Let's just say I'll just pick one of my previous appeals. This case focuses on whether or not a judge can order real estate transfers when the owner of the property was not a party to the proceedings. But there's more you can put in there, but this one line for this particular case that I'm talking about is going to encompass 85 to 90% of the research. All right, this is the core reason the judge messed up in this case, is that the judge ordered property turned over to somebody when the owner of that property was not a part of the lawsuit. I mean, it's one we should win. It's a very unique posture. I've never seen this happen before, where someone who owns the property was never made a party and now someone else owns it. So there are other issues in this particular appeal, but that's the core of it. And so by putting that in there, you're letting your team know, especially the associate, this is where you need to focus, right? We may win on everything else, but the core of this appeal and the major error is that this judge ordered a real estate transfer from a party that was from someone who's not a party to the lawsuit.
Right. And you can get as detailed, obviously, as you wanted in there to give them as much information. What we've designed it as the case details there is to just use that like your super crazy advanced Post-it note there, that you leave your anything you would want anybody else that was working on the case to know, you leave it in that area. And the core factual premise we've separated out to where, you like you said, you take what actually matters about the case and leave those facts in there. But the case details we've kind of oriented, or we recommend that you use as a way to share information that everybody would need. The case details, obviously, everybody needs something like this. We work with a group a couple of weeks ago, and I asked, well, how are you currently running your cases? And she said, you really don't want to know. I said, well, it's probably spreadsheets and just a bunch of Post-it notes. And I just kind of laughed. She didn't say anything. And then she reached over and, no exaggeration, grabbed, I don't know, 300 like pink slips and just did like this. And it was a stack of those. That's how they were keeping all their information. So she was mainly having to focus through why anybody would do that in this day and age. I don't know, but that is what was happening. So this is basically going to stay with this case always, even when you're
even that, that's a funny story about that, but that's what all attorneys do on all these other platforms, is they basically keep Post-it notes in the various firm management software that they have. It may be online, but it's not something that's automatically going to go from one Post-it note to the other and tell your team what to do. So I mean, that's basically what all attorneys do in one form or another, and it's a wild way to work, and it just wore me out. I just got tired of it. Like I'm not going to keep practicing like this. I couldn't. I could not grow my practice anymore past that, with all the stress of deadlines and managing cases. That was my bottleneck. I could not grow past that. And a lot of attorneys, they just simply can't. They grow their practice by years of experience and increasing their hourly rate over the years, and that's how they grow. But there's a point where you just can't manage the cases anymore. And everybody gets to that point. Some people can handle more than others. But once you get to that point, you're stuck. And you can only grow by, especially if you do hourly work, through the years, increasing your hourly rate. Now, contingency attorneys, personal injury attorneys, that's a little different. That depends on the quality of cases that come in. But for the vast majority of firms that depend on hourly work, you're stuck. Everybody hits a point where they're stuck and where they can't manage anymore. And this will help you pass that.
right. Well, this allows you to take your knowledge and put it into your team. It gives your team an access point into exactly what you want done and how you want it done. And that's something that just think about it, the way you used to practice. If you are sitting over your associate's shoulder and advising them every second on what to do, they would be able to do exactly how you wanted it done, right? And that kind of happened a lot. I believe that you would have to communicate with them more than you would like to, but with Firm Overwatch, you don't have to do that. Like, it's there. They have the information they need. And the more you put into the program, the more information that you have, that you're just there with everybody all the time. So it is not only your personal assistant and your team's personal assistant, it is you, or a version of you, in an automation form as their personal assistant. So that's why there's a lot of personal assistant type programs out there. None of them function the way we do, because we run your system. We run your brain. Your firm's best is, so if you're in a multiple firm situation where there's a lot of attorneys, a lot of civil litigation attorneys, you've got one that just shines. You run their practices. Like, everybody runs their automations. You can really identify the stars in your organization and have everybody on their level as close as you could be. So that's what we're excited about. And I know you are running your firm in a very similar way.
One thing to add on what you just said about the training, it allows me to spend the training on really going deep on the tasks. For example, yesterday I met with my associate on drafting South Carolina request to charge, basically the jury instructions. And we got videos on how to put them together. And that was helpful, because the work product that she has based on those videos is incredible. But, there are some things that the only way to really know how to do it is to sit down with someone who's done it many, many times and explain in depth. When you hit an area where there are no instructions, but there's a case or there's law on that point, you have to draft your own instructions. And I was able to sit down and actually spend time and walk her through each step on how to do that, right? When there's no other form out there. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was having to go in and teach every little task. And so it allows, when you actually sit down with your associates, you could really go deep on the learning, and that's going to help them not only get up to speed, but be more valuable to not only you, but also to clients. And so that's something I've seen recently that I never have been able to do before. I've spent a lot of time training, but I'd have to, when someone new would come in, and I had to retrain, and then I couldn't really focus on the points where we really need to spend time on and to develop to get them to the next level.
Right. And a lot of lawyers that I talk with, they don't want to expand because they know that training is going to be so difficult. So you do it once.
It's crazy. I mean, I actually enjoy doing it. However, it's a sacrifice, because to do that, you've got to not bill on a case. And, let's say you get one or two new associates coming in. I mean, that's over a 6-month term. That's easily a month of your time that's gone.
Right. Yeah. And you only get 12 of those a year. So that's
that's
kind of important.
So, the old way, when you expanded, you had to take a loss.
Right.
In some way.
Yep. Lose the game.
But
right.
With this, you could actually expand and keep moving.
You keep moving. That's exactly it. And a pro tip, like when you were training your associate yesterday, just record it. Like put up your cell phone, get a little cheap little tripod and record it, and you never have to do it again. Then you just upload it to your
right here to the task. Yep.
Yeah, and then it's there. So that's something that people don't think about. Like, it's not something you wake up every morning and go, I'm going to record the training I'm doing today. But if you know you're going to do it, like just go ahead. Even if it's a bad record, you can just audio record it.
Dan Martell would be upset with me.
Yeah, 100%. So
never do a training twice. Always video it.
Right. Well, that's what Firm Overwatch is. We don't want you to do anything twice that you don't want to do. That's what we've built, and that's what we hope to continue to build. Again, pumped to have you on board, and looking forward to what happens in this new year.
All right, appreciate it. Yeah, the walkthrough and creating my own path. For me, being very not tech savvy, the fact that I could do it all in one time and with the pressure of video was pretty epic.
Yeah, and if you need to switch it around or just edit it later, it's no big deal too. The component works incredibly well. It's what I've spent the most time designing and coding. So enjoyed it. Pumped to have you here. Let's go.
All right, 2026.
Yep, absolutely. Have a good
one.
All
right, see you later.